We are very excited to have an interview with author Dayton Ward. Welcome, Dayton.
How are you doing, everybody?
Now, let's give our listeners a background of how you began your love of Star Trek. Where did that all begin, and where did you grow up?
I have been a lifelong fan of Star Trek. I grew up in the 1970s, so I was a fan watching the reruns of the original series after school. I watched the animated series, first run. The afternoon rerun of Star Trek was the lone exception to my parents' no TV before homework rule. That was my thing. I watched the shows. I played with the toys. I built the models. I read the comics. I shot people's eyes out with those plastic tracer guns I used to sell that didn't look anything like me.
Yeah, I had the same things.
Yep. So that was my childhood. So I remember buying, the oddball book that would show up in stores. Yes. Drooling over stuff like Star Trek poster books and the Starfleet technical manual and whatever Enterprise kit. I built that AMT Enterprise model probably a dozen times. Never got it right.
Do you remember the one with the three, the Bird of Prey, the Romulan Warbird, and the Enterprise? It was like it had little springs on them, so you can model all of them and put them on display.
It had a 3-prong stand or something, and it was a snap kit. It wasn't even a glue kit. Yeah, that might have been the only one I had any real success with. But I loved the only one I've never built. It was the Spock where he's shooting at the three-headed snake. Yeah. I still want to build that to this day. I'm 50 years. I'm 52, and I still want to build that model.
Remember seeing that one?
Yeah, that was a great model. It's really beautiful.
They re-released it several years ago now, I think, for one of the anniversaries. But so I bought the collector edition in the tin box with the cool art on it and everything. It sits on the shelf right now, waiting for me to get to it. I'll get there one winter. I don't know.
So where'd you grow up?
I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida, but I'm also a military brat, so I moved around a lot. So born in Tampa, but then we moved around a lot. And then my father got stationed back down in Tampa as a recruiter for the Marine Corps. So that's where I ended up doing the rest of my time in school. So my teenage years were in Tampa. I still call Tampa home. But I haven't lived there for many, many years because I was also in the military, so I got moved around a lot. And then we settled in Kansas City, which is where I live now.
So what was your first TrekCon experience?
I'm pretty sure it was a local convention. It may have even been a local creation convention before creation blew up to be this monster thing. It was, they put on a lot of smaller shows that you could confine inside parts of a hotel. Yes. And I think I went to one where Jimmy Doohan was the one guest they had. And
was that in Tampa?
No, it was in Tampa. Yeah. I don't remember where it was, but it was one of those kind of shows where you could pay like $5 at the door and get in. It was that level. So I'm pretty sure that was my first con experience.
And autographs were included and photos and everything. It was a whole different world, creation conventions then.
It wasn't the machine that it is now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I bought some kind of cool fanzine or other fan-made merchandise that I still have in a box somewhere. I just remember Star Trek was huge in Tampa when I was a kid because they would run, the rerun every day. They'd run all kinds of old science fiction on movies and TV on Saturday, and then they would run marathons. Every Labor Day, I think, they would do a 24-hour Star Trek marathon. I still have buttons with the local TV logo and the Star Trek marathon neat thing that they handed out at the mall. They didn't have comic book stores at that. I mean, they probably did, and I just wasn't aware of them. But they didn't have, cool, nerd, geeky, collectible stores. If you did find one, it was stuck in the corner of a strip mall, and they didn't have any cool signage or anything. You had to know it was there. Yeah. So, the good old days.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide starting to write?
I started playing around with writing as a hobby in my mid-20s, I think. It was a sort of a creative outlet. I was a software developer back then, so this was a way to exercise a little creativity. I didn't have any real plans to try to publish anything. I mean, I was writing it for fun. Sometimes I would write stories involving friends of mine, and we'd all have these stupid, wacky adventures, with versions of ourselves that were probably pretty idealized. We were all pretty ripped and pretty strong and cool with girls and all that kind of stuff. So fiction. I started writing Star Trek stories as a fun outlet, and then the Strange New Worlds contest came along in 1997. So I entered a story into that very first contest, and they bought it. And then I repeated that for the next 2 years. And for those who don't know, Strange New Worlds was a writing contest for unpublished writers. So if you were a brand new author with no credits, you could sign a Star Trek story, and then they would look at it like a professional and pay you if they bought it, if they decided they wanted it. So they did that for me. I did it 2 more years, and then I rendered myself ineligible to enter their contest anymore because now I'm a, air quote, professional author. And they offered me a contract to write a Star Trek novel. And that was 2000, and I've been doing it ever since.
So what was your first Star Trek novel?
My first Star Trek novel was an original series book called In the Name of Honor. And it's a movie-era novel set right after Star Trek V. So that was my first full-length novel, and that published out in 2002. And I said I've been writing for Simon & Schuster pretty much ever since, every year since.
So you said you're into IT. Do you credit Star Trek as far as having that idea of making that a career?
I'm sure it played a role on some level. I don't know if I said, oh, Spock and computers are cool. I think I'll be a computer guy. But computers were, it was a vastly different learning experience with computers back in the early 80s. I mean, not everybody had a computer. Personal computers weren't a thing yet. The only computers you had were mainframes or access to a remote mainframe downtown or something. So I took my first computer course at high school, and I think it was a basic programming class. And then I took a Fortran class and an assembler class, and decided that's what I wanted to do. So when I joined the service, I joined as an IT person, a programmer. So I did programming in the military for several years, and then got out and did it in the private sector. So yeah, by the time I ended that, I'd been doing software development for about 25 years, combined with military and civilian.
Does your background in the military or computer sciences, do you feel that has an influence in your writing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it definitely helps as far as military aspects of Star Trek writing go. And as far as computers, yes, because I've written stories where computer software plays a role, or computerized societies, or computerized this, that, and the other. Yes, definitely. It has provided at least a platform from which to begin, and then you build on it and make it more futuristic for Star Trek. But yeah, absolutely. Both of them have been tremendous influences.
But I love the fact that you have that background and you give a sense of realism, not just in the characters, but in the situations that they're in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd like to think it helps me with fleshing out the technology and the world building, and the military side of things probably contributes the disciplined approach that I take to my writing, and the desire to do it right and do right by people. So yeah, I would like to think that these are all influences.
Give us an idea of what it was like once you became part of one of the established Star Trek authors and one of the ones that keeps getting called back for a regular output of Trek books.
I don't really know. It just kind of happened. I started off working for one editor at Pocket Books, and that editor left. And then, so a lot of times when you're working in a stable of writers that an editor has assembled for one reason or another on a group project, when an editor leaves, you don't necessarily get picked up by other editors, because those editors also have their preferred stable of writers, particularly for tie-ins where, deadlines are so insane and you need to have people that you can rely on to deliver work on time, quality work on time, and are easy to work with others. You assemble your favorites, I guess, for lack of a better term, or your preferred partners.
People you can depend on, I imagine.
People you can depend on. So, we'd established a reputation with one editor, so we had no expectations that we would continue. But luckily, one of the editors picked us up because he had us in mind for a project, so we started working for that editor. And then another editor reached out while we were working and said, I need these people. They're great for this project. And then so one of those editors leaves, we still get cart along. And it's happened like 4 or 5 times now. We've been fortunate that when whatever editor comes in to replace the one who's left decides that, we're worth keeping around. Not everybody's so fortunate, and I'm aware of that. I'm keenly aware that my day will come when, somebody will take over and I'm not their cup of tea. So for now, I'm taking advantage of it, and I'm milking it for all it's worth, because it's too much fun. It's one of the best ways to earn a living. It's also one of the worst ways, but,
Tell us about the new position you just mentioned, what you're doing for Simon & Schuster for the Star Trek novels.
Okay. I have been working as a contracted consultant to CBS. It's now called CBS Global Franchise Management, which used to be CBS Consumer Products. It's basically an expanded, elevated, uplifted version of that with a much more comprehensive focus. They're tackling all kinds of things. So basically the idea is to expand the brand beyond just what you see on TV or the movies. It's not just merchandising. It's also, exhibits in museums, theme parks, traveling shows, anything that can further the brand.
And that's what we want. We love Trek, and we love buying stuff, and we feel we're ambassadors to a degree.
to a degree. It's not just the new stuff. There's also, they're trying, the original series, Next Generation, are still remain incredibly popular. So there's ways to extend that message to new audiences. So that's what they're charged with doing. Now, my role is much more much more focused on a specific area of that, which is I'm a consultant with respect to tie-in merchandise that has a story or a narrative attached to it. So novels, comics, video games, anything with a narrative, particularly with the new shows. So if it's tying into Star Trek Discovery or the forthcoming Star Trek Picard, then I'm at least involved in advisory capacity in whatever tie-in effort is coming along. I don't have anything like a veto power, or I don't make decisions. I just advise and inform the people who do make the decisions. I'm not a creator, I'm an advisor. It's just kind of how Dave Mack put it the other day. Yes. But I still think first of all, it's a very fun job, because you get to kind of see how the sausage is made a little bit. But it's for a guy like me who's always been very into that stuff to begin with, the books and the comics and the games and the role-playing games, it's really a fantastic job, because I'm very protective of those things. Like, as a writer of the Star Trek novels, one of the writers of Star Trek novels, I'm very protective of that line of books. I mean, we all want to do right by them. We want to do right by the books. We want to do right by the readers. So for me, this is a way to further that desire. Like, I've got a better position now where I can maybe help guide some things. I'm not gonna push anything, but I can certainly advocate. That's my goal, is to be able to advocate for these different tie-in partners who are trying to do good Star Trek. And it's been a fun ride the last 3 months. It's a little insane some days, where I think there's just not enough hours in the day for all this stuff. Yeah. But it's been a lot of fun.
Well, we were excited when we heard that, because we said, wow, someone who grew up as a fan, who understands the Star Trek universe, and now you're in a capacity to steer the ship a bit to a degree, and at least influence some of the decisions.
Right. Like I said, I'm not necessarily driving the ship, but I mean, I'm at least, I have the attention of the person whose hand's on the wheel.
That's great.
And so my job is to help them do the best job they can with these tie-in products. Particularly, like I said, novels, comics, which are things that I love anyway. I'm not just a writer of them. I'm a reader and a fan and a collector of them. Like I'm doing some work with IDW, the comic book publisher for Star Trek comics right now. And, I've never missed an issue of anything they put out for Star Trek.
We're the same way.
And so
they do a wonderful job.
They do a very fine job. And some of the stuff that I'm getting to see now, that it's in early stages of development, is just mind blowing if you're a fan. Yeah. And so that's the hard part, is I'm a fan, but I'm also trying to do a job. But it's easier to do the job when you come to it with a love of the material. So it's really not like work. It's work, but it really isn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the old adage, find a job you love, you don't work a day in your life. That's really where I'm at right now. I just wish it had happened, 25, 30 years ago, because I'd have more time to do this. But so I'm here for the now. We'll see how it goes.
That's so awesome. Do you have anything that you'd like to express to our listeners about anything in the future, or anything that you're particularly excited about with regards to your work?
Just keep watching the skies, because stuff's coming. Not just from me. I mean, from several of my colleagues and other writers of this and artists of these products. There's a lot coming down the pike. Star Trek they are trying to bring Star Trek to a new level. Not just on TV and not just on, screen, but also, the fan experience. So it's been quite a rush to watch it in its formative stages, how they're trying to rebuild this. I really can't wait to see what they do next. So pay attention. Keep watching the skies.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.